Hello and welcome to my online Bible study. This lesson is on the paradoxical way that God teaches us through Christ that may not always be apparent to us through normal theological channels. I hope that this lesson will open up your understanding to a deeper relationship with God, not through theology, but through faith. Thank you. Suppose that you were sleeping and had one of those realistic dreams that seem completely real to you. Jesus is standing right in front of you, and he looks directly at you, and he says, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect." Now this is a direct quote from Matthew chapter 5, verse 48. But what would you say back to him? Would you tell him that you're going to try to do your best to be perfect? Or would you explain to him that, Jesus, no one is perfect, and you're asking me to do something that simply isn't possible? Such a command opens up a lot of issues for each of us. It confronts us with the existential question as to what does God expect from us? The fact is that this quotation comes from the Sermon on the Mount, right after Jesus tells his listeners that they must love their enemies, pray for those who persecute them, and that their righteousness must exceed the righteousnesses of the Pharisees. This context is very important in determining what it means to us. Now, Jesus was famous for confronting his audience with commandments such as these rather than appeasing them with greeting card niceties or enigmatic sayings that no one could understand. What Jesus was doing was teaching them and us that we must grow up to our potential, and there is no limit to that potential. God exists in just this same way. He always exists at his potential. He never lives beneath it. And he expects the same from us. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to be like gods, but it means that we are to be the best that we can be by living to our full and complete potential as children of God. Now, when I first heard this commandment, I pushed it away. I just didn't want to deal with it at the time. It wasn't until later, when I started to read the Bible more carefully and study it, that I couldn't avoid it any longer. But that didn't make it any easier for me. It was the very holiness of God that drew me closer to him. But now it became the holiness of God that pushed me away. I later found out that this attractive resistance is called anxiety or dread. It created a tension in my inner being that just wouldn't resolve itself. What I loved became what I feared. If I chose to turn away from God's holiness out of fear, I would be turning away from Jesus and his salvation as well. But if I accepted this commandment out of love, I would have to make too many life changes, perhaps including my relationship with friends and even family. But this was exactly what the commandment was supposed to do. It was God making me take my faith seriously. It was this examination of my faith that made me realize that I could not live such a life that God expected from me. But at the same time, I also believed that that was, in fact, exactly what he expected from me. Now, this created a great stress and anxiety within my heart. And it wasn't until I realized that the only way to resolve this stress was to put my total trust in God, that he could do what was impossible for me to do. And this is clearly in line with what Scripture teaches us. And here are some examples from Isaiah chapter 55, verses 8 and 9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And from Matthew 19:26, it says, But Jesus beheld them and said unto them, With men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. And from Mark chapter 9, verse 23, Jesus said unto him, If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. And finally, in Mark chapter 10:27, and Jesus looking upon them said, With men it is impossible, but not with God, for with God all things are possible. Now, Jesus didn't give his disciples an easy way out. The impossible was not in his vocabulary. According to his teachings, it was not for us to put limits on God, no matter how convenient it might be. It's through such paradoxes as these that Jesus teaches us about true faith by forcing us to look deeper into ourselves for truth. And at this point, faith becomes more than an ideology. It becomes an activity of the soul. It's not up to us to determine what is and what is not possible for God. That's for God to determine. It's for us to believe in whatever he asks of us and let that belief turn into the activity of faith. But not just a superficial faith, but a faith that takes us to our fullest potential. When I began to see Jesus' teachings in this new light, I saw the beauty that had escaped me through my reluctance to see the true power of God in the unknown. It was this unknown that creates fear and anxiety in us all. And it is only faith that relieves us from that dreadful anxiety by means of a leap into the unknown called faith. And once you understand this about the teachings of Jesus, you begin to see it elsewhere. It's a beautiful thing to be able to live to the full potential that God has given to us, or at least to seek out that potential. I'm going to leave you with a final thought from 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. It says, Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. I hope that this lesson encourages you to take that leap of faith into what might be, rather than simply accept the best we can do as good enough. Thank you, and God bless.